Good morning, and welcome home to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Becky Gregory. Thank you for joining us, we who bring a teaching of hope, we who bring a saving message, who welcome all in our doors. Buddhists and atheists, Christians, pagans, straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, cisgender, transgender, non-binary, and intersex. All who are searching, seeking, looking for more meaning, more service, more love. All of us gathered here together. I invite you to put your smartphone on the worship mode, which means it won't make any sounds, but you can still post on social media about things you hear today, to let those who can't be with us this morning share a little of our experience, maybe even an invitation to join you here next week. Please rise now, either in body or in spirit, and join us in singing hymn number 1011, Return Again, and remain standing for our chalice lighting.
Our chalice today is being lit by Mike Schultz. This is a congregation bound not by creed, but by covenant. May those in agreement affirm our church covenant now. We affirm a caring community of and for all ages, seeking wisdom, doing service, and living with integrity. In our diversity, our covenant holds us in unity as we celebrate our shared spiritual journey. Good morning. I'm Renee Garcia. My pronouns are she, her. One thing I particularly love about this church is that all of us have the opportunity to be leaders in the worship service. We don't have to be of a certain gender or orientation to lead worship. We don't have to have certain letters behind our names to give a sermon or prescribe to a certain theology. Everyone is invited to bring their voice, their story, and their faith to the table. I'd like to welcome any guests we have today. We're so happy you took the chance to join us for worship. If this is your first time here, please stop by the visitors table so we can meet you and answer any questions you might have. And next Sunday, on August 10th, you'll have the chance to learn even more about Live Oak at our Exploring Membership class. That will be hosted by Reverend Joanna in the library, along with the membership team, and that will happen after Sunday's service. This church is buzzing 7 days a week, and there are a lot of ways for you to connect with our beloved community beyond Sunday. The best way to keep up with what's happening is through our weekly email newsletter. You can sign up to get it at the visitor's desk or by going to liveoakuu.org and click on What's Happening. And y'all, there really is a lot going on. We've got an all-church retreat coming up. We've got a fall camp out. There's a men's group, a ladies' lunch, supper groups, book groups, and a lot more. One thing that's happening this Saturday, the 9th, is a documentary film screening about the tragedy happening in Gaza. There will be 2 Palestinian advocates there to answer questions and explain what you can do to help. And the proceeds from this event will support humanitarian aid to children in Gaza. Our call to worship is by Elizabeth Mount. Come into this place, bringing all you hold with you, though your heart be heavily burdened, whether you be on the brink of tears or burn with unquenchable rage. This community can hold you in your strongest emotions. Yes, even the messy ones are welcome here. Come in if you sing a bit too loud, if you hold still as statues and just breathe it in, if you sway to the music, moving your soul, you are welcome. Come in and say amen when the Spirit moves you. Tell that preacher to preach, sister. Tell us. No pressure, Becky. Or close your eyes and quietly let your mind float free on the blessed words. Come into this place with every piece of yourself gathered up, and let us be the church incarnate. Let us bring forth the Spirit of all that we love by the words of our mouths and the doing of our hands, as we make sacred this time together.
Each Sunday, we gather as a congregation, and we bring our joys and sorrows with us into this room. When we ask for remembrance or celebration or prayer or thoughts, we make of this sanctuary a sacred circle. Today, we have a sorrow from Barbara Coldiron. 2 of her good friends are struggling with stage 4 cancer. Please send them loving thoughts. And from Renee Garcia, a colleague's granddaughter was born last night at 3 pounds, 7 ounces. Mom has been through the ringer. Please pray for Mom's recovery and baby's continued strength. For all joys and sorrows, spoken and unspoken, we bear witness with our care and concern. Please join me in singing.
Please rise in body or spirit for hymn number 86, Blessed Spirit of My Life.
Good morning. I am Chris Jarman. I am your Director of Lifespan Faith Development, and I have a story for you today. I invite you to settle back. I invite you to open your ears to listen and open your hearts to hold the story. And it's called The Other Way to Listen. Get why I said to listen? By Byrd Baylor and Peter Parnell. Let's get this working correctly. There we go. I used to know an old man who could walk by any cornfield and hear the corn singing. Teach me, I'd say, when we'd pass on by. I never said a word when he was listening. Just tell me how you learned how to hear that corn. And he'd say, it takes a lot of practice. You can't be in a hurry. And I'd say, I have time. He was so good at listening, once he heard wildflower seeds burst open, beginning to grow underground. That's hard to do. He said he was lucky to have been by himself up there in the canyon after the rain. He said it was the quietest place he'd ever been, and he stayed there long enough to understand the quiet. I said, I bet you were surprised when you heard those seeds, but he said, no, I wasn't surprised at all. It seemed like the most natural thing in the world. He just smiled, remembering. Another time, he heard a rock, a kind of murmur. It murmured kind of good things to a lizard. I was there. We saw the lizard sunning itself on the rock, and of course we stopped. The old man said, I wonder how that lizard feels about that rock. I wonder how the rock feels about the lizard. He always asked himself hard questions that take a while to answer. We leaned against another rock a long time, and then he said, did you hear that? They like each other fine. I said, I didn't hear a thing. He said, sometimes everything being right makes a kind of sound, just like now. It wasn't much more than a good feeling that I heard from that old rock. Were you surprised to hear it? I always had to ask. He said, not one bit. It seemed like the most natural thing in the world. I said, I wish I'd heard it too. He said he thought I might someday. He told me how a friend once heard a whole sky full of stars when she was 7. A whole sky of stars. And later on, when she was 83, she heard a cactus blooming in the dark. At first, she didn't know what she was hearing. She found it by just following the sound. There were 20 flowers on one cactus. They were all white as the moon. The old man said, most people don't get to hear those things at all. I said, I wonder why. He said, they just don't take the time you need for something that important. I said, I'll take the time. But first, you have to teach me. I'd like to if I could, he said. But the thing is, you have to learn it from the hills and the ants and the lizards and the weeds and things like that. They do the teaching around here. Just give me a clue how to get started, I said. And so he said, go get to know one thing as well as you can. It should be something small. Don't start with a mountain. Don't start with the whole Pacific Ocean. Start with one seed pod, or one dry weed, or one horned toad, or a handful of dirt, or one sandy wash. I said, I'll take the sandy wash. He said he started with one tree. Every morning of his life when he was young, He climbed a cottonwood and sat there listening. He told me it was worth the time. He said trees are very honest and they don't care much for fancy people. He said he doesn't know of anything he ever did as important as sitting in that tree. Tell me everything you can, I said. He said, well, you have to respect the tree or the hill or whatever it is that you're with. Take a horned toad, for instance. If you think you're better than a horned toad, you'll never hear its voice, even if you sit in the sun forever. And he said, don't be ashamed to learn from bugs or sand or anything. I said, I won't. He thought of one more thing. It's good to talk or walk with people, but sometimes go alone. That way, he said, you can always stop and listen at the right time. I'll remember everything he said, and I did, but nothing worked. I thought there must be something wrong with me because I only heard the wind and the quail and the coyotes and the doves, just things that anyone could hear. I almost gave up trying. Of course, I still went walking in my hills. In fact, I used to sing to them a lot. I thought that since they wouldn't sing to me, I'd just sing to them instead. The day I'm telling you about, I was singing the whole song, and it was something like this. Hello, hills, hello, hills, hello, hills, hello. That was after I'd been away 5 days, and I missed those hills for 5 days. I went out earlier than usual. You know how everything looks new at the sunrise. Well, all those hills were looking new. I was just walking where I always walk, but that morning, I just kept thinking, here I am. And whatever way I happened to go was always right. I climbed the rocky side, not the path. The rocky side is steeper, but I like it best. And anyway, that's where I found my 3 hawk feathers. I stood at the top where I always stand looking down. Hello, hills, hello, hills, hello, hills, hello. All I know is, suddenly, I was not the only one singing. The hills were singing too. I stopped. I didn't move for maybe an hour. I never listened so hard in my life. Of course, their kind of singing isn't loud. It isn't any sound you can explain. It isn't made with words. You can't write it down. All I can say is it came up straight from those shiny, dark lava rocks, humming. It moved in the wind. It seemed to be the oldest sound in the world. And all I can say is, I'm standing in the middle of that sound at 7 o'clock in the morning just thinking, here I am. And thinking, listen. And not even being surprised. Because it seemed like the most natural thing in the world. The end. In our Unitarian Universalist faith, we believe that each person has worth and that we're all connected to each other, to the earth, and to something greater than ourselves. Some call that God or spirit, maybe just simply love. Emerson, who was a UU long ago, called it the oversoul, a spirit that connects all living things. This is part of nature. What would you hear if we listened deeply? Not just with our ears, but with our hearts. And with this, our story is told.
Our reading today is from Henry Thoreau in his book, Walden. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan-like as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broad swath and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms, and, if it proved to be mean, why then to get the whole and genuine meanness of it and publish its meanness to the world. Or if it were sublime, to know it by experience and be able to give a true account of it in my next excursion.
Hi. I chose to talk today about transcendentalism. I wish it was a shorter word. I'm sure that I will trip over it at some point before I finish speaking today. But I chose it because it really connects to kind of a profound moment for me, or more than a moment, but I discovered the topic in college, and it's what led me to Unitarianism. That took me to membership in various UU churches, and decades later to our beloved Live Oak. Here's my textbook I saved from that class. It cost $8.95. And in it, I found my notes about transcendentalism that I had kept all those years.
What's the name of the book?
Oh, Literature of the United States. It was a textbook, yeah. Transcendentalism is a brew of a wide range of beliefs, philosophies, and religions. It's not for nothing that transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." And Edgar Allan Poe accused the movement of promoting obscurity for the sake of obscurity. So as soon as you think you've got a simple explanation for transcendentalism, you'll find a whole new rabbit hole to climb into, and that's where I've sort of existed for the last few weeks. But it's important and worth thinking about because it's considered the first distinctly American philosophy. And it had huge impact on literary and philosophical and religious thought. And really, it surrounds us now as Unitarians. Transcendentalists drew from European philosophers, especially German philosophers. Immanuel Kant was a primary source. The Romantic poets in England, Eastern religions, and indigenous Americans, to arrive at a belief that the divine could be found within each person, in nature and in personal experiences. Virtually all the famous transcendentalists emerged from Unitarian circles. You probably know most of the names: Emerson, Margaret Fuller, Henry Thoreau, the Peabody sisters, there were 3 of them, Bronson Alcott, Theodore Parker, Nathaniel Hawthorne, among others. Emerson, who liked to be called Waldo Emerson, though we always have to repeat all 3 of his names, had been profoundly influenced by his very eccentric aunt, Mary Moody Emerson. She was very prickly. She helped raise him and his brothers. Their father had been a prominent Unitarian minister in Boston, but he died in 1811 when Emerson was just 8. He left behind 5 sons and a very overwhelmed widow. So Aunt Mary, who was this father's sister, was called in to help. She had a sad childhood. She was sent away from her mother at age 2 to various relatives, though other children stayed at home with the mother. So she, throughout her life, felt unwanted. She never married, and even as a child, and most of her adult life, she ended up serving as a caretaker to her extended family. Though uneducated, as her brothers had been, she was brilliant, and she was amazingly well self-educated. Plato, the Greeks, amazing reading that she did. And she was a devoted spiritual seeker all of her long life. She lived to, I believe, 88. She once wrote Emerson, "How futile are creeds of faith and formulas of worship. The infinite stirs within." And long before her nephew became the much heralded father of Transcendentalism, she was originating ideas that he would later build on. She wrote her thoughts in these little booklets that she wove together or sewed together from her papers. There were thousands of pages of these almanacs. Emerson read them, studied them, and he held on to them for so long that at one point she threatened him that that she wasn't going to send him another one if he didn't send back what he already had. Tiny Concord, Massachusetts, population 2,000, was a hotbed of transcendentalism. I knew I'd trip on it. In the 1830s and the 1840s. This is a rendering of, I think, the Common of Concord in 1839. And if the tall, steeple-looking thing is actually the Unitarian Church in Concord in that drawing. Emerson, who was educated at Harvard Divinity School, had moved to Concord after leaving the ministry in 1834. He was very disillusioned with it. In Concord, the Alcotts were neighbors. Bronson, who was an extremely progressive, often controversial educator and philosopher. He was always struggling to make a living, and luckily his daughter, Louisa May Alcott, became a famous author, and she and her sisters and mother often kept the family going with income. Thoreau sometimes lived with the Emersons or elsewhere in Concord. Margaret Fuller, someone I didn't know a lot about, but who was actually supposedly an extremely brilliant thinker and quite well known in her day. She and Elizabeth Peabody visited frequently. They would stay with the Emersons, and they would stay a long time. Lots of late night discussions going on with all these various people in Concord. When Nathaniel Hawthorne married Sophia Peabody, they rented a house in Concord that had been the home of Emerson's grandfather. As a wedding present, Thoreau surprised the Hawthornes with a vegetable garden he planted next to the house, which is a gift idea if you ever need one. I thought that was a pretty cool idea for a gift. So our photo of the young Nathaniel Hawthorne, we just couldn't get it to work. But I just have to mention that everyone considered the young Hawthorne to just be drop-dead gorgeous. So when you go home, Google a picture and take a look at him. People wrote that passers-by in the street would stop to look at him, that women were so smitten, even though he was very introverted. But if you see the picture of him as a young man, age does this to everybody. He was really cute. Back to the point of the sermon. Emerson bought land just outside Concord, near a pond called Walden, where Thoreau famously lived in a small cabin for a couple of years in the 1840s. By the way, I always had this idea in my head that Thoreau was, kind of a hippie and drifted around and, borrowed from the Emersons, which he often did. But actually, he had gone to Harvard, so. And many of these men had been educated at Harvard. So in Cambridge in 1836, about 40 or 50 of these like-minded people established this informal transcendental club. That's what they called it. Even some women were allowed. Elizabeth Peabody had actually been one of the founders. And they were kind of this roving group that met in various locations. They didn't have a regular schedule or anything, but to have deep philosophical and religious discussions. This tiny little place at 13 West Street in Boston, this is a later photo of it, but it once was one of their haunts. It was a tiny bookstore opened in 1840 by Elizabeth Peabody. She was a Unitarian and an educator. It became Transcendental Central. A lot of the famous Transcendentalists and names that we no longer know, but met, passed through, exchanged books at this place. Peabody was a publisher. She published The Dial, which was a transcendental magazine. And the bookstore hosted what were called conversations, capital C. These were for women, sort of consciousness-raising groups is what it sounded like to me. Sort of a group of early feminists, and they were led by Margaret Fuller, who became very famous for this. Transcendentalists were widely published, and they traveled throughout New England, giving lectures. Emerson gave the famous Divinity School address in 1838 that laid out many of the tenets of Transcendentalism. It was so controversial, he wasn't invited back to Harvard for 30 years. Some of these people were more radical than others. The writer, Randall Fuller, says they loitered along the fringes of acceptable thought, which, I don't know, that might become our church motto or something. They traded, what were radical ideas, the abolition of slavery, which, of course, was gaining a lot of strength at that point, communal property, women's rights, and the end of capitalism, which we see how well that worked out. To most people, certainly to Christians, and even other Unitarians, Fuller says these intellectual vagabonds seemed harebrained, if not a little dangerous to polite society. Let me see where this goes if I do this. Oh, it's done. Okay. Even though many were Unitarian ministers, the Transcendentalists sought to blow out the walls of the Unitarian Church of their day. They thought that the Unitarian foundations of science, rationality, and logic were not enough. It was sort of all brain, no heart. It was intellect instead of emotion. They believed the ideal spiritual experience transcends the physical, the rational, and the scientific. The divine was to be found within ourselves through personal experiences of awe or wonderment. Emerson wrote at one point about walking at twilight across a bare commons. He says there were puddles of snowy slush all around, and that he had no special thoughts of good fortune when he just suddenly experienced a perfect exhilaration. He said he was glad to the brink of fear, that he felt uplifted into infinite space. He said, "I see all, the currents of the universe, the currents of the universal being circulate through me." Emerson believed all human beings and all of nature were connected in a universal consciousness, that he called the Oversoul. And the meaning of life was not some static thing that you could finally discover if you worked hard enough, but something you lived that evolved and was always changing. But despite these people being, pretty prominent in their day and sometimes in quite esteemed positions, and despite their many discussions and public lectures traveling around the country, Transcendentalism as a movement was dying out by the 1850s. Some of these people moved away. Some evolved their philosophy differently. Nathaniel Hawthorne was especially. Many shifted their focus to social reform, especially abolition of slavery. But they also were, agitators in women's rights and educational reform circles. Elizabeth Peabody closed her bookshop around 1850, and she shifted her efforts to promoting enlightened methods of teaching kids. The Hawthornes left Concord to live in Salem in Europe. Margaret Fuller moved to Europe in 1846, and as she was returning to the U.S. in 1850 with her new Italian husband and baby, they all died in a shipwreck. But while the fervor of the movement dissipated, I don't think its truthfulness did. Of course, it did not overtake the Unitarian Church. We're not sitting here in Live Oak Transcendental Church. But I think we might as well be, because UU beliefs have evolved to incorporate so many of the Transcendentalist ideas. Just look at our principles. When we uphold the inherent worth and dignity of each person, we're recognizing the divine in everyone. When we support the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, we are acknowledging that there is no single great truth to be handed to all of us, that we must find and experience our own sense of what's holy and revelatory. When we respect the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part, we are reminded of Emerson's concept of the oversoul. I admit that it's easier and I feel like a better transcendentalist when I'm on vacation, surrounded by majestic mountains, or I'm on a beach listening to the eternal rhythm of waves. I can reach a spiritual place sometimes through music, reading, or art, or for me especially rocking a baby and holding their little feet. I've always loved the very word transcendence, to transcend above what? For me, it's a call to move beyond the material, beyond anxiety or anger, beyond daily irritations or even despair. It reveals ways I can look past all the enormous distractions and noise that life throws at us. It reminds me to try harder to be open to splendor, to try to recognize and appreciate magnificence, and to remember there is heaven all around me. I want to close with these words. They're excerpted from Mary Oliver's 1990 poem, The Summer Day. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Please join me in a moment of reflection in words and silence. May we hear the quiet, listen for the Spirit, and exhilarate in our holy power.
We are the tradition of the free church. Our church and our community outreach are supported not from an outside source, but from within. We invite you to make a financial contribution to help sustain this church's vital work, knowing that every gift, large and small, is appreciated and carefully used in service to our mission. The QR code or text information for donations is available at the back of the seat pocket. If you would like to donate by credit card, Apple, or Google Pay, someone from stewardship can assist you near the kitchen after the service. As the ushers come forward to receive the offering, I invite you to say with me these words. We are building, beloved community, with our labor and with our treasure. With gratitude, we receive the offering. May it help us to fulfill our mission in the world.
Each week we sing these words. Make us aware we are a sanctuary, each made holy and loved right through. May you go into your week to seek and find the sacred in yourself and all around you.
This is your invitation to the Faith Development Hour. We have all sorts of ways for you to grow and connect today. From 11:15 to 12:15, we have the all ages UU Maker Space upstairs in room 201. We'll be exploring justice and what that means with art and self-expression today. Our adults have their I just went blank. Doe God, The Simpsons, Social Justice with Joel. And today we're talking about the Cartridge family. We look at social justice issues through the lens of The Simpsons, and we hope you'll join in room 105. We also have Bring Your Own Practice, Spiritual Practice, which will be in 208. At 12:30, there is the meditation group that meets in 208 from 12:30 to 2. And then next week, we've already said it from the pulpit, but we have Exploring Membership with Reverend Joanna. She's back from her travels this summer. And next week is the Blessing of the Backpacks. Now, you'll see these flyers out in the Welcome Center, and I just want to kind of tell you, bring your backpacks. And if you're not a kid, bring your briefcase, bring your lunch bag. Bring whatever you carry in life. Bring your heart. We'll open it up, and we're going to fill it with blessings as we do a collection of school supplies. So pick up some extra school supplies this week to donate. Bring your favorite after-school snack to share during our fellowship hour when we're going to have a book walk with the library team, and there'll be all sorts of fun things to do intergenerationally in the fellowship hall. And we're going to bless the little library that we are installing, and it will be finished this week. So the church is now going to have a little library that focuses on banned books. So we have a lot of things going on. Yeah. So make sure you're here next Saturday for our documentary. Bring your stuff on Sunday, and make sure you engage in something today that feeds your soul and helps you to grow and embrace joy. Thank you.
Please rise in body or spirit for hymn number 168, One More Step, and remain standing for the extinguishing of our chalice. We extinguish the flame here that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. May it guide your way until we are together again. It's been such a gift to be together today. A special thanks to today's home team who provided hospitality, worship, and tech leadership. That includes Cassandra, Chris, Nancy, Tracy, Mike, and Tina. Let's continue that hospitality by taking the next 5 minutes to talk with someone you don't know. Members, be sure to introduce yourself to any visitors we have. They're the ones with the handwritten name tags. Show them where to find the visitors table and the coffee. And may we all know the blessings of fellowship.